In the next few minutes, I'm going to explain how to play Daughters by John Mayer. Before we begin, I would like to say that I am in standard tuning and I'm going to refer to my strings by their letter names. The song begins with an introduction. In this introduction, the first note that we are going to play is going to be the 9th fret of our D string. So place your ring finger on the 9th fret of your D. You're going to pick that note one time and you're going to play a vibrato with it. So you're going to push that note up and down the board and you're going to hold it for a second. It's going to sound like this. After that, what you're going to do is you're going to leave your ring finger where it is, and it is on the 9th fret of your D. What you're going to do then is you're going to place your pointer finger on the 7th fret of your G string, and you're going to place your middle finger on the 8th fret of your B string. You're going to play those three notes and you're going to let them ring out. And once again, my ring finger is on the 9th fret of the D, my pointer finger is on the 7th fret of the G, and my middle finger was on the 8th fret of my B string. Only those three notes are played. So far we have this played slowly. Then what we're going to do is our pointer finger, when we played that last chord, it was here on the 7th fret of your G string. You're going to leave it right there. What you're going to do is you're going to play that note, and with it you're going to stretch your pinky out to the 11th fret of your D string. So you're going to play the 11th fret of your D, and you're going to stretch, and you're going to also be playing the 7th fret of your G string. Those two notes are played. So far, all together. Then what we're going to do is we're going to place our ring finger here on the 8th fret of our B string. And we're going to take our pointer finger and we're going to place it here on the 7th fret of our D string. You're going to play your B string first. Then you're going to play your D string. Then play your B again. Then play your D once more. And then after that, you're going to drop your pointer finger down here to the 7th fret of your B and you're going to play it with the vibrato. So that little group of notes there is going to sound like this, played slowly. All together in real speed we have this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to play that 9th fret of our D string once again with the vibrato. Then you're going to place your pointer finger on the 6th fret of your G string. You're going to play it and you're going to hammer on to the 7th fret. After that, you're going to play the 9th fret of your D string once again with the vibrato. So far, all together, we have this. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to once again play that hammer on from the 6th fret of our G string to the 7th fret. After that, you're going to place your ring finger here on the 9th fret of your G string and you're going to play it with the vibrato. So far, all together, we have this played slowly. And then to end the introduction, what you're going to do is you're going to place your pointer finger on the 7th fret of your B string. You're going to pick that note and you're going to bend it up a half a step and then stop it. And then to finish the introduction, you're going to play the 7th fret of your B string with a vibrato. So those last two notes are going to sound like this. And that's going to be all the introduction. So the introduction played in real speed is going to sound like this. For verse 1, I have broken it down into 4 parts. In the first part, it is going to contain 4 chords. The first is going to be a B minor 7 add 4. This chord is formed by taking your middle finger and placing it on the 7th fret of your low E string. At the same time, you want your middle finger to be curved so that it lightly touches your A string, because we want to get a muffled sound out of that string. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your ring finger and place it on the 7th fret of your D string, and your pinky is going to go below it on the 7th fret of your G string. That's going to make up the B minor 7 add 4. A common note in all of these chords is going to be the 7th fret of your G string, so your pinky is never going to leave this note. So you're going to continue to press down on the 7th fret of your G with your pinky throughout all these chords. So we just played our B minor 7 add 4. The second chord is going to be an E minor 7. We're going to play this by placing our pointer finger on the 5th fret of our D. Our pinky is still on the 7th fret of the G, and we're going to play our bottom 2 strings open. So be sure that your pinky's curved so that it does not touch your bottom 2 strings. That's going to be the second chord. It is known as the E minor 7. The third chord is going to be an E minor 7 with an A in the bass. So what we're going to do is we're going to just be playing the same formation. However, the only difference is going to be that we are going to include our open A string. So it's going to sound like this. And the fourth chord used in part 1 of verse 1 is going to be a D major chord. Once again, your pinky stays here on the 7th fret of your G string. You're going to place your pointer finger on the 4th fret of your D, and your middle finger is going to go on the 5th fret of your A. And that's going to make up the D major chord in this position. Our strum pattern, we're going to strum each chord down, down, up, down, down, and then down, up, down, up. It will sound like this. Then make your chord change. Part 2 of verse 1, what we're going to do is we're going to play the same chords as we did in verse 1 in exactly the same way that we strummed them. The only difference is at the very end we're going to add a chord, and we're going to play it 2 times. The chord that we're going to add is going to be also an E minor 7 chord. In this position, it's played by placing your pointer finger on the 5th fret of your D string. Your ring finger is going to go on the 7th fret of your A, and your pinky, like I said earlier, is still on the 7th fret of your G, which it's never left. That's going to be the E minor 7 chord in this position. So like I said, in part 2 it's going to be exactly the same as part 1. We're just going to add that 1 chord to the end. So I'm going to play it. It's going to sound like this, part 2. And then part 3 is going to be exactly the same as part 2. And part 4 is going to be exactly the same as part 1. So that's the first verse in Daughters. Altogether, the verse is going to sound like this. And so that is going to be the verse. The chorus is going to go as follows. We're going to begin by playing our B minor 7 add 4. Our second chord that we're going to be playing is going to be in E7. And once again, throughout the chorus, your pinky is never going to leave the 7th fret of your G string. The second chord, what you want to do is you want to place your pointer finger on the 6th fret of your D string. In this chord, you're just going to play the 6th fret of your D, and you're going to play the 7th fret of your G. The third chord used in the chorus, you're just going to move your pointer finger down a half a step so that now it is on the 5th fret of your D string. And you're going to play your E minor 7 with the A in the bass, which means you're going to play your open A string down. And all the notes will be the open A string, the 5th fret of your D, the 7th fret of your G, the open B, and the open high E. And then the fourth chord in the chorus is going to be that D major chord that we went over earlier. Now the strum pattern that we are going to use in the chorus is just going to be down, down, up, down, up. It's going to move like this. Throughout your chorus, you're going to repeat those 4 chords. You'll repeat them 4 times. So it's going to be like this, played in its entirety. So that's going to make up the chorus, and the chorus is played a total of 3 times in the song, and every time it's played exactly the same. So like I said, our strum pattern was down. To play I'm just going to take that first chord and go through the strum pattern. It was, and then I made my chord change to the E7, then to the E minor 7 with an A in the bass, that D major chord. And then I repeated all of that 4 times. Now then, after the chorus is played, we're then going to go into the first interlude. This interlude begins by playing the 9th fret of our D string with the vibrato. And then what we're going to do is we're going to leave our ring finger here on the 9th fret of the D. We're going to take our pinky and we're going to stretch it up to the 10th fret of our A string. You're going to play the 10th fret of the A, then you're going to play the 9th fret of your D, then you're going to play the 7th fret of your G string with the vibrato. So that's going to sound like this, played slowly. All together in this interlude we have this, and slow. Then what we're going to do is we're going to play the 9th fret of our D string. And then you're going to place your pointer finger on the 6th fret of your G string. You're going to play it and bend it up a half a step. Then you're going to let go of that note. Well, you're not going to let go, but you're going to stop it so that you can play the 6th fret of your G with the vibrato. So that's going to sound like this. So far we have this in the interlude. And then to end it, we're going to play the 7th fret of our D string. Then you're going to play the 9th fret of your G string. Then you're going to play the 7th fret of your G string with the vibrato. So that last little group of notes will sound like this. And that's going to end the first interlude. All together it's going to sound like this in real speed. Now to begin the second verse, what we're going to do is we're going to run through the chord progression that we ran through whenever we were playing the second part of verse 1, which was the B minor 7 add 4. It consisted of the E minor 7, the E minor 7 with an A in the bass, the D major, and then we played the E minor 7 in this position. So that's going to be the chords that we use in verse 2. We're going to run through that chord progression 2 times. Now the difference in this verse is going to be the strum pattern. It's going to be a little bit more upbeat, but we're going to run through those 5 chords 2 times. The strum pattern is going to sound like this. And all I did on each chord was it was a series of down and upward strokes. Every time I went down, I had the frets, the notes pressed down firmly. And to get a percussive sound, I lightly picked up my fingers and came up to get a muffled sound. Okay, so it was just me pressing down firmly and going down, then lightly picking up and coming up. Okay, so you run through those 5 chords 2 times and that's going to make up the verse. I just went through it in real speed. It will go as follows. After you've played the second verse, you will then play the chorus once again. Following the chorus, we will then play the bridge. The bridge I have broken down into 4 parts. The first part, the first chord will be an A minor chord. This chord is going to be played, you will place your ring finger on the 10th fret of your B string. Your pointer finger is going to go on the 9th fret of your G string, and your middle finger is going to go on the 10th fret of your D string. Your D, G, and B strings are played. Then you're going to move this exact shape down a whole step. So you're going to move everything down 2 frets so that now your middle finger is on the 8th fret of your D string, your pointer finger is on the 7th fret of your G, and your ring finger is now on the 8th fret of your B string. That is going to be the second chord in this first part. And then the third chord is going to be a D major chord. In this position, you're going to take your pointer finger and lay it flat against the neck of the guitar so that it bars across your D, G, and your B strings at the 7th fret. So you're going to play the D, G, and B strings. Your pointer finger is laid flat so that it covers those 3 notes. And that's going to end part 1. So part 1 consisted of our first chord, which was an A minor. We moved that shape down a whole step to play a G minor. And our third chord was a D major. That's going to be part 1. It's going to sound like this in real speed. The first chord in part 2, we're going to place our pointer finger on the 5th fret of our D string. Our ring finger is going to go on the 6th fret of our G, and our pinky is going to go on the 7th fret of our B. Your D, G, and B strings are the only 3 strings once again that are played. The second chord in part 2 is going to be, and this chord here is an A13. The second chord is going to be an A7, and what we're going to do is we're going to, from this position, this last chord we just played, the A13, we're going to take our pinky off the board and we're going to place our middle finger here on the 5th fret of our B. So the second chord is going to consist of our middle finger being on the 5th fret of our B string. Our ring finger is going to be on the 6th fret of the G. And our pointer finger is going to be on the 5th fret of the D. The D, G, and B strings are played once again. So the 2 chords we have so far in part 2 is the A13, the A7, and then we are going to play a B minor 11. That's going to be played by placing your pointer finger on the 5th fret of your B string. Place your pinky on the 7th fret of your G string and take your ring finger and place it above it on the 7th fret of your D string. Your D, G, and B strings are played once again. And that's going to end part 2. So part 2 consisted of the first chord, which was an A13, then the A7, and then the B minor 11. So parts 1 and 2 together, played in real speed, will sound like this. The third part of the bridge is going to consist of 3 chords as well. The first is going to be in E minor 7. In this position, you're going to place your pointer finger on the 2nd fret of your A string, and at the same time, you want your pointer finger to be curved so that it lightly touches your D string so that you get a muffled sound out of that string. Then you are going to play your G string open, and you're going to have your ring finger here on the 3rd fret of your B string. That's going to make up the E minor 7 in this position. The second chord is going to be a D add 9 with an F sharp in the bass. We are going to do this by placing our ring finger on the 3rd fret of our B string. Our middle finger is going to go on the 2nd fret of our G, and our pointer finger is going to be on the 2nd fret of our low E. And also with your pointer finger, it's going to lightly be touching the A string so that you get a muffled sound out of that string. And that's going to make up the D add 9 with an F sharp in the bass. And once again, my pointer finger is on the 2nd fret of the low E. It's lightly touching the A. I'm playing the D string open. My middle finger is on the 2nd fret of the G, and my ring finger is on the 3rd fret of my B string. I'm playing in this chord, I'm playing my low E string through my B string. The third chord in part 3 is going to be a G minor 9, and we are going to play this. We're going to take our pointer finger and we're going to lay it flat against the neck of the guitar so that it bars across the D, the G, the B, and the high E strings here at the 3rd fret. And then you're going to take either your ring finger or your pinky and you're going to place it on the 5th fret of your high E string. You're going to play your D through your high E strings. It will sound like this. And that's going to be the third and final chord in part 3. So part 3 played together will sound like this. Now I'm going to play parts 1 through 3 in real speed. It will sound like this. For part 4 of the bridge, what we're going to do is we're going to take our middle finger and place it on the 2nd fret of our D string. And we're going to take our ring finger and we're going to place it on the 2nd fret of our B string. Be sure that your fingers are curved so that they are not touching your G or your high E strings. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pick through some notes. First we're going to play the open A string. Then we're going to play the D string. Then the G. Then the B. Then we're going to play the G again, and then the D again. So far we have this, played slowly. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move up, and we're going to have our middle finger here on the 4th fret of our D, and then we're going to place our pointer finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. Once again, be sure that your middle finger is curved so that it is not touching your G string. And make sure that your pointer finger is curved so that it is not touching your high E string. So from here what we're going to do is we're going to go through the same exact picking pattern. And that was, once again, you pick your A string open, then pick the D, then pick the G, then pick the B, then the G again, and then the D. So far in part 4 we have this played slowly. what we're going to do is we're going to move our middle finger up a half a step so that now it's at the 5th fret of our D string. And we're going to have our ring finger on the 5th fret of our B string. Once again, be sure that your G and your high E strings are not being touched by your fretting hand, because we're going to play those strings open. So now we're going to go through the same picking pattern. We're going to play the A string open, then play the D string, then you're going to play the G string, then you're going to play your B string, then once again play your G, and then play your D. So that's going to sound like this, played slow. So far all together in part 4, played slowly. And then we're going to move this, just as we have it, up 2 frets, so that now my middle finger is on the 7th fret of the D, and my ring finger is on the 7th fret of my B. Once again, be sure you're not touching your G or your high E strings. We're going to play the same picking pattern. We're going to play the open A string, then the D, then the G, then the B, then the G, and then finally the D. And that's going to end part 4. That last little phrase of notes will sound like this. Part 4 in real speed is going to sound like this. After the bridge, we are then going to play the second interlude. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to place our pointer finger on the 11th fret of our D string, and we're going to place our pinky on the 14th fret of our B string. You also want your pointer finger to lightly be touching your G string to get a muffled sound. You'll play those 3 notes. Then you're going to move everything up 1 fret and play those 3 notes. Then you're going to move your pointer finger up to the 12th fret, and you're going to take your ring finger and place it on the 14th fret of your G string. You also want your pointer finger to lightly be touching your D string to get a muffled sound. You'll play those 3 notes. Then you'll move that down 1 fret, and you'll play those 3 notes. So far we have this in the interlude. Then once again we're going to play the first 2 chords that we went over, where our pointer finger's on the 11th fret of the D and our pinky's on the 14th fret of our B, and you're also lightly touching your G string. Play those 3 notes. Once again, move everything up 1 fret, play those 3. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our pointer finger and place it here on the 10th fret of our A string, and we're going to take our ring finger and place it on the 12th fret of the G. Your pointer finger is also going to lightly be touching your D string. Play those 3 notes. Then move everything down 1 fret, play those 3 notes. So far all together we have this played slowly. Then once again we're going to play our first two chords that we played. And then once again we're going to move up and we're going to place our pointer finger on the 12th fret of our A and our ring finger on the 14th fret of the G, and we're lightly touching the D string. Play those 3 notes. Move everything down 1 fret and play those 3 notes. Then after that we're going to go right back to our first chord, play it. Then you're going to move everything up 1 fret to play the second chord that we went over. And then to end this, we're going to place our pointer finger on the 11th fret of our G string. We're going to lightly be touching our B string with our pointer finger, and we're going to place our pinky on the 14th fret of our high E string. Play those 3 notes. And that's going to end the second interlude. All of it played together and slow will sound like this. And we're going to repeat all of that 2 times, and that is going to be the end of the second interlude. After that, you'll play the chorus once more, and that's going to be Daughters by John Mayer.